Class is now in session. This is the State of Choice podcast.
Welcome back to the State of Choice podcast. I'm your host, Ed Tarnowski, also known as Ed with Ed Choice. Joining me today is the rest of the P&A team. We're going to jump right in today and start off with what happened in Tennessee. Katherine, if you want to start us off. Really exciting news coming out.
Wonderful news from the school choice space. Tennessee leading the charge for 2025. You know, we always talk about past years being the years of school choice. Nothing has anything on 2025. Tennessee in January has passed a massive, universally eligible education savings account scholarship for the students of Tennessee. We're looking at a program that'll allow 20,000 students to apply and have options to go to the private school of their choice, but also spend that money on a litany of things that specializes in helping them get through their education career successfully. We're talking tutoring, SAT test, ACT. You're even able to go to higher education courses if you would like. I think it's a hugely exciting opportunity for Tennessee. Now, we are seeing that with this program, with the 20,000 scholarships, there is something called prioritization. So 10,000 of those scholarships are reserved for all students across Tennessee, regardless of economic background or where they live. The other 10,000 scholarships are available for students with state recognized disabilities, low and middle income students. So you're going to see a prioritization happening, but ultimately this is a universally eligible program. We're very excited too, because along with the 20,000 scholarships that are issued for this upcoming 2025-2026 school year, in the event over 75% of those scholarships are issued, an additional 5,000 scholarships will be issued in the fall of 2026, continuing to grow this program. It's so exciting to see a program that's crafted to hopefully meet the demands of parents in the state. So Tennessee has led the way. We cannot congratulate Governor Lee enough and thank him enough for his strong leadership. You know, we've seen time and time again, Ed, that governors want to pass a school choice bill, they have to dig in. And certainly Governor Lee has done that. This is his second session pushing on this. And we are so excited for this to be just another star of his gubernatorial cycle as he leads Tennessee into the next year.
I think that's absolutely right. And speaking of governors digging in, let's talk about Greg Abbott in Texas. He certainly has dug in. Texas has been trying to get choice for many, many years now, but Abbott has truly been a champion. He made some changes in the last, he pushed for some changes in the last election, and it looks like there's going to be changes in policy this session. Can you tell us a little bit about what's happening in Texas and what the progress looks like for school choice so far?
The electorate has spoken in Texas, and the message is they want school choice and they want it now. We are looking at such a fast-moving session. We kicked off the session immediately with the Senate forming the Senate Education Committee and Chairman Brandon Creighton leading the way with filing SB 2, the second bill filed after the budget, to say parents need the right to choose their child's education provider. We're so excited. Immediately, Chairman Creighton had a Senate education hearing, which our CEO, Robert Enlow, was able to attend and testify at. That day of that hearing, the bill was passed out and moved on to the Senate floor. In that time, Governor Abbott led the charge, making school choice an executive emergency item during his State of the State address.
Huge.
So exciting. Huge momentum pushing this bill. What's very interesting about Texas is in the first 60 days, the House and Senate chambers cannot discuss any bill on their floors unless it is the budget, unless a governor deems that topic an emergency item, which he did do. The moment Governor Abbott declared that an emergency item, that next Wednesday morning, the Senate floor pulled up SB 2, and after a very lengthy debate, it passed the Senate floor 19-12, and we are just so excited to move it on. I checked this morning, and that bill is engrossed and pushed onto the House, and we are ready for the House to take up the charge and answer the demand of Texas parents, which is we need school choice and we need it now. Now, in addition to SB 2 already passing the Senate, we also see in House Bill 1 and Senate Bill 1, the state budget, $1 billion allocated for a school choice program. This would be the second largest program operating in the nation upon passage. We are so excited that the governor, the Senate, and the House are all putting such support behind choice. It's such an encouraging number to begin the discussions for. You know, when we look at SB 2, We see that on average, a parent would get a $10,000 scholarship per person. At $1 billion, we're looking at a program with potentially 95,000 students in the program. It's huge. Surpassing Arizona, we would be second only to Florida. And this type of momentum is expected from Texas. Texas leads the way financially in extreme fiscal conservatism. It's time that they lead the way in education freedom. We're so thrilled. I cannot wait. We're waiting for Chairman Burrows, who historically has been a supporter of school choice, to begin announcing committees. And we expect this House Education Committee to immediately take up some form of school choice. And we'll see where it goes. We'll see if they take up an identical bill to SB2, or they could have their own version. We're very excited. And it's just exciting times in Texas and Tennessee. You know, I've been telling everyone in Texas, you're getting lapped. We're seeing such movement in Tennessee, and Wyoming's had some movement, just in a very exciting time in the school choice space.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love a little friendly competition between the states. And it looks like Texas is finally catching up on this issue. So let's talk a little bit about Montana. There's some movement over there as well. What could you tell us about what you're seeing on the ground, or what you're hearing from partners and legislators?
Yes. So in Montana, we're seeing Governor Gianforte, who is historically a big supporter of school choice, was on our Ed Choice board at one point, looking to provide some freedom for Montana's students. And so we have seen Representative Sue Vinton file House Bill 340, I believe is the name, and they are pushing hard to get something passed so that Montana families also can receive choice.
Oh, that's so exciting coming out of Montana. I'm wondering if in any of your other states, if you're seeing any movement.
We are. What's been so exciting after this last fall election cycle, we are seeing movement in states that historically weren't all that interested in the topic of school choice. I point to Washington. The state of Washington this morning had a committee hearing discussing a school choice bill in them. That is a huge step for the Pacific Northwest. We've had a lot of talk with Oregon legislators who want to look at passing something. They're ready for some options. And, you know, along with options, they're ready for competition and that education market to explode and respond innovatively to the challenge their specific state's facing. It's very exciting. So we're watching that, but really on deck for me, Tennessee, Texas, Montana, and now maybe Washington.
So exciting. And we love to see them starting that conversation in some states that maybe people didn't expect it from as much, but are progressing nevertheless. So as our listeners have probably heard by now, we're talking a lot about our new definitions of universality. So I'm wondering, Katherine, if you could go into a little bit about what that looks like in Tennessee, Texas, and Montana, and what in the future, how in the future these states may be able to improve upon these programs.
At Ed Choice, we believe in radical freedom. And that means three things. We believe that all students should be eligible for a choice program. They should be able to spend that money wherever they want to, and they should be able to be funded the exact same way they would if they were in a traditional public school. So when we look at the state of Tennessee, which is very exciting, this new program coming out does allow for universal eligibility. Huge win. Any family can go ahead out and apply, and barring funding opportunities, they will get in. Very exciting. Now, when we look at that second part of usage, Tennessee does allow for a lot of usage. Is it universal? No. The first part of your ESA in Tennessee will require you to pick your private school of choice, and you'll have to pay the tuition. After, though, you pay that tuition, you have a litany of options of spending that funding. So there is some freedom there. Not as radical as we would like here at Ed Choice, but goodness, it's a huge solution. We'll take it. We love it. The final piece is funding. Now, one cool thing about the Tennessee scholarship is it is tied to the base funding allotment that a traditional Tennessee student would get. However, we would love a little bit more because let's be honest, there usually aren't very many students that actually just get basic base funding. There's additional funding that comes with that, and we'll be advocating for that in the future. You know, the fight's never over for us. We're so happy that Tennessee has taken such a broad step forward with universal eligibility and almost universal spending. Let's get there to that funding portion. And we're going to see that same fight in Texas. You know, at least SB2 that has passed, we're seeing universal eligibility. Huge. Again, there's a lot of opportunity for any kid to apply. There is a prioritization piece, though, so we're going to be watching that. Then we'll move to usage. There are some limitations on usage. You know, you will have to be a specific type of private school. There's a couple strings attached that in the future will be happy to discuss. But for now, the way it's written, we are so thrilled to have a step forward. And of course, the last piece is the funding portion, right? So Texas universally available, usage close, but we can get some better. And then finally, the funding piece. The funding piece is just a set number according to SB2. So if you're a special needs student, you'll receive $11,500. If you're a traditional public school student, you'll receive $10,000. And if you're a homeschool student, you could receive up to $2,000. We're going to be pushing for more for that because, as we all know, a student in Texas, according to the Texas Department of Education, costs about $15,500 a year to educate that student. We'd like that equal amount of money going into their ESA. But those are conversations that we'll continue to push as choice continues to become even more popular and as these programs get utilized. You know, we really just want to make sure that radical freedom is available for families because only a family can respond quickly to specific needs of a kid. A government program cannot. And that's what's so beautiful about an ESA. An ESA allows a parent to look at a student and say, you know what, you need some tutoring for a dyslexia issue. You need some tutoring because math just isn't your thing. A parent can walk right out the door and get that done with their ESA. And so the more opportunities for ESA, the better outcomes we're going to have.
What an amazing start to 2025, and there's so much more to come. Now looking to Aaron's region. Aaron, you've been on the road quite a bit the last week or so. Tell us about what's going on in the region and about your travels.
Well, always great to be back on. And for our listeners, it is a wild and quick 2025 session. We are off to the races, honestly. It's really exciting to be a part of this movement because there's really some amazing champions in the states that are taking this issue to their colleagues, to their constituents, and explaining how school choice is really going to make a difference in their lives and why it's so important for their states to have this as well, for those states that don't have a program or for those that do, why it's so important to expand it. So what's great is at this point, states are not feeling like the guinea pig, or at least they shouldn't. There's lots of good models out there to follow, and we're hearing great things on the ground. The discussions and the debate remain heated. So happy to talk through some of my states and talk about where I've been this week, if you'd like me to go into more detail on that. But yeah, I'll let you prompt me what's best for our listeners here today to kind of catch up on.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's start with Wyoming.
Great. Yeah, that has been where I was the last couple of days, really all week, keeping an eye on that state. People might think that wasn't necessarily a priority this year because they did get an ESA passed last year, but the governor did come in and make some line item vetoes to that bill, and they wanted to kind of strengthen it this year, come back and revisit what that looked like. Essentially, last year's bill ended up keeping it limited to folks at that 150% level and below, but we, of course, at Ed Choice believe that it should be universal, and so that's what Representative Ocean Andrew came back with this year to say, let's take this to the next step. And as we just witnessed in Tennessee's special session, there's now 14, if we can count them, 14 on the books. So that's been my message to legislators, senators, and representatives alike while I've been out on the grounds is that they are following the footsteps of some great examples that are already out there. And so this is a tried and true next step, and it's important that they do that as well. So it's a great bill, and we're looking forward to seeing what the Senate does with this bill now that it's in their hands. Last week, we had the House passing it out with a solid majority vote. And the week prior to that, I had the chance to speak at the House Education Committee and provide testimony there where it actually left the committee 9-0. So there is definitely some goodwill towards this. There's definitely people that want to see this done. There's always going to be some remaining questions. And unfortunately, there is some opposition as well, rather strong opposition from groups that are not wanting to see this done. It's our job to provide the facts. That's where Ed Choice really comes in handy because we can step into the scene and say, here's actually what constituents want. Here's actually what the effects of school choice are. I know we talk about it a lot on here, but one thing that gets a lot of eyes opened when I talk to people is those 188 studies that we have, the rigid gold standard studies that show overwhelmingly 84% of those studies, whether you're testing on you're looking at the civics effects, parental satisfaction, fiscal effects, 84% of them are coming back with positive results. So it is scrutinized, and it's showing that this is really an excellent path forward. So we're going to keep our eyes on Wyoming. Fun fact, they have perhaps the fastest session. They'll be done on the 6th of March officially, 40-day session. Very, very fast. So there are several states that don't convene every year, and Wyoming used to be one of those. I learned this week. It used to be a 60-day session every other year, and they decided they needed to come back and handle some things in those off years. So they decided to split those 60 days, and they make a 40-day session out of the odd years, and then they have a budget year that's just 20 days. So next year will be even faster. But it is a blitz, so folks are moving quick, and it's important that we were on the ground to answer any of those last-minute questions as the Senate gets ready to take that up in their committee coming this following week.
Right. And just for our listeners' context, we are recording this on Friday, February 7th. But yes, really exciting progress coming out of Wyoming. I know there was a lot of disappointment in how it ended last year with those line item vetoes, and advocates are looking to get a truly a program with universal eligibility. So we're watching that really closely, and we're hoping to see it go well. But you're working in some other states too, Aaron, in the region. Let's talk about Idaho. They're looking to go that refundable tax credit route, a little bit different than ESA, but in many ways in the same spirit. Let's talk about what's happening in Idaho.
Yeah, that's a great question, Ed. I mean, Idaho is another one that we're watching very closely because it's one of those rare states that has a Republican trifecta, and it has 0 school choice programs. So there's a lot of energy there now to see something done because these states are seeing what their neighbors are doing and across the country, and they don't want to be left behind. This is the wonderful thing about America. We talk about it a lot, 50 laboratories of democracy, especially in education where that is in the hands of the states, more so perhaps than other issues, especially with some of the rhetoric coming from our president, Donald Trump, who might be seeing even more emphasis on the states kind of getting back in the driver's seat. And Idaho's looking around going, wow, we are actually standing out now as a state that doesn't have anything, and that's no longer common. Right. That's now the exception to not have any kind of school choice program. So they are working on a refundable tax credit. It's a great bill up there as well. And as we're recording this just moments ago, I mean, it really is breaking news. The House of Representatives in Ohio has passed that bill on the floor with a solid vote, 42 to 28. So it's really great to be a part of this and see it in action. But some passionate speeches on the floor, and really proud of the bill sponsors up there who were able to articulate this and really did a great job kind of shepherding this through the first part of this process. But that is breaking news for folks. Idaho now on the way to having this great bill in place, a refundable tax credit. Will be, of course, because of that structure, a little bit of a different approach than what a lot of states are doing with the ESAs, but it still leaves for a lot of different kinds of uses. So it's taking that into account. And it's a really well-structured bill that might have some other upsides for states that don't want to go down the path that some of these other states have gone, or have just different concerns. Or again, we have 50 different laboratories of democracy that want to try these things in different ways. The overarching theme remains the same, and that is that children deserve a chance, and that we need competition in this space.
Absolutely. And I know in Idaho, there's some really passionate people and legislators on the ground who have been pushing for this for a long time. They're really hoping this is finally the year, and it's looking like it, increasingly like it will be. But what about some of the other states? I know you're looking at North and South Dakota as well. What's going on up there? Yeah,
so we can talk about North Dakota a bit because they've got a couple different bills that are being run. And again, these sessions happen so fast. So if you blink, you might miss it. North Dakota's actually got 2 primary competing ESA efforts. One is Senate Bill 2400. That's being put forward by Senator Axman, and we're kind of sorting out what that looks like. It's got some pros and it's got some cons. I think from a policy standpoint, we would like to see a slightly larger allocation to students because we know about what the national average is with these school choice programs, just over $6,000. So they're looking to give out the top level $4,000 per student, and then it's tiered in smaller increments below that. So $4,000 being the top allocation to those of the lowest income bracket. We think that maybe that would be better strengthened if it was a higher amount, so that way it could really truly transform the lives of those students, and those families could truly make that work for them. based on what tuition fees are and some of the other costs of educating a child. So, but it is universal. It actually gives $1,000 to public school students as well, which is an interesting aspect we don't see in a lot of other bills. So that's going to be one to keep an eye on for sure. And then another one that we're excited about is Senate Bill 2303. It has a House companion bill as well, but the Senate and House actually both looked at their bills and had their respective hearings this past week. And then at least the Senate and probably the House as well will be taking those back up in their committees to hopefully pass them out in the coming week. So that is also another universal ESA program that has a lot of good merits as well. And so we're just going to be keeping an eye on both of those and kind of seeing which horse gets ahead. I think, again, it's important. North Dakota's a state that doesn't have school choice. So we've got two brand new states we could be adding to the W column if we could get it done. So really exciting stuff there. A lot of momentum when you talk to the activists and you get down to kind of the granular level, talk to constituents, they recognize the merits of having these opportunities. So it's important because every delay, every moment that's delayed, that's a child, that's a student that's not getting the opportunity to maybe find the learning environment that really would be best suited for them.
Absolutely. And Aaron, just like I asked Katherine, assuming a lot of these states are on the brink of universal eligibility, which is an amazing step forward for the choice movement. Looking forward, assuming these programs are enacted in a lot of these states, what can they do to make it even better to get to that truly universal level?
It's a very good point. And at Ed Choice, we kind of emphasize it's great to be able to allow every constituent family to sign up for these programs. But if the money's not there, then you're going to eventually, you're going to have a limit. It's just how that works. So it's important that the actual demand is met. And so, of course, legislatures trying to do their due diligence to maintain a strong budget have to look at those numbers and what makes sense for them. But we believe that this saves the state money in the long run. So, again, the dollars are pretty stark. The average school choice program per pupil, we're looking at just over $6,000 as a cost there versus nationally over $17,000 per pupil at your traditional district schools. I mean, just ask any homeschooler that any homeschool parent that are they spending $17,000 to educate their child every year? Of course they're not. That's crazy. So we believe that you get a much better bang for your buck on some of these school choice programs, and it gives flexibility so parents can meld together the kind of education that they know is going to be best for their child. So that's one aspect, is making sure that money is there to actually meet demand so people aren't left behind who really do need to pivot or find those other opportunities that may not be strictly within the traditional district schools. But another aspect too is we kind of work on that triangular image there of the three pillars or kind of the three angles of what makes a true universal program. And that's the uses, right? So we've got to see more than just tuition covered. And the reason for that is because that's just one aspect of educating a child. The traditional thinking of a brick and mortar school is fine, but we're already seeing innovation in this space with some of the early adopters of ESA programs and similar programs where you're getting micro schools and very niche learning environments that may have other costs associated with it other than just tuition. And so giving that flexibility to cover some of those costs so those students can participate is a really beautiful thing. And so that's one thing that I'm excited about, because a lot of the bills that are being put forward are taking that into account. They're understanding the need to include things like uniforms or transportation or, preparing for college. What does that look like? Is there testing that needs to be done? Is there other learning opportunities that are adjacent to the traditional classroom that can be included? Curriculums, or of course, especially if you're homeschooled, you'll need to have your own curriculum. That's got a cost to it. So lots of different components, and it's great to see states thinking about that and taking that into account when they craft these bills, because that's really what's going to strengthen the use of these, is when people go, wow, okay, I can attend an educational setting or put together an educational kind of hodgepodge, whatever works best for that student, and that those various costs are going to be covered. So that's exciting to see, and it's good that lawmakers are thinking about that.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Aaron. Moving on to the Southeast now, Nathan Sanders is with us as well. Nathan, what's going on? Let's start in South Carolina.
Yeah, absolutely. I also spent some time in South Carolina this week. interesting things happening there. So just for context for listeners who are catching up, the South Carolina Supreme Court last fall ruled essentially that most of their ESA program, the Education Trust Program in law, was not constitutional. Basically, anyone who was using the funds for private school tuition, it wasn't constitutional. Lots of legal scholars disagree with that decision. There's some political games there as well. I won't get into that. But all that to say, the legislature came back this year and are dedicated to sort of fixing that, right? Making an amendment to the program to create a program that is constitutional so that these families who were using the program last year can now reapply and keep their funds and continue to educate their kids as they see fit. Now, there are efforts to sort of expand this, right? So the program that was on the books sort of capped eligibility at year 3 to only about 400% of the federal poverty level in South Carolina. And so they were only in year 1. So I believe that was like a 200%. So still serving, thousands of families in South Carolina, but we're working now to where we can maybe push that and try to get it to a universal program in South Carolina, which, as Aaron said before, is what we want, right? So the Senate last week and this week debated the bill entered the Senate as sort of a bit of an expansion, making that year 3 mark of the program actually at 600% of the federal poverty level, which is a huge step up, almost near universal is what we say in terms of eligible kids in South Carolina. Mm-hmm. As the Senate debated it, there wasn't a lot of excitement for this, and they actually sort of watered the bill down back to where it was at that 400% federal poverty level, which is a little discouraging to see, but luckily, there is some hope. The bill now is past the Senate. And it's on to its House committee, and sort of the House have promised in a way to expand this where they can. They're going to have to, of course, go back and forth with the Senate to decide ultimately what's going to go on the governor's desk. So there's hopes to expand this program, making it near universal or universal to where every kid in South Carolina will be eligible. So over the next couple of weeks, we'll start to see the House debate, introduce sort of their amendments for the program, and hopefully expand that out. So more to come there in South Carolina, but we do have lots of hope that the House will expand that out to a universal program. That's the push there. So more to come in South Carolina.
Excellent. And anywhere else in the region, Nathan, where else have you been traveling to, or what else are you watching closely?
Yeah, I would say we're definitely watching Missouri this year. There was lots of question marks going into legislative session with a new governor, some new legislative leadership, and there were some questions in there about what are these new folks are going to do for choice and for students, right? So they have a current program. It's called the Most Scholars Program. That's a tax credit ESA that serves a good bit of Missouri kids, but it could definitely be better, right? We could definitely expand it out to serve more kids. The biggest problem with that program is since it's a tax credit, the state does struggle a bit with raising money for that. And so the governor in his State of the State a week or two ago announced that he wants to add $50 million in of legislative funds to the Most Scholars Program, which would be huge for that program because the biggest sort of weak point for it is the money. So if the legislature can give that program some money, it has the potential to serve lots of kids in the state of Missouri. So as session goes on and they're debating budget bills and such and what's going to eventually land on the governor's desk, there's some hope there that there will be a lot of money, $50 million or more to that Most Scholars Program. So we're super excited about that.
And Nathan, I know you've already talked a little bit about this, but just like I asked Katherine and Aaron, what can these states do that are most active this year in your region to get closer to true universality?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think in South Carolina, there's a few different things. I think one, right, what we've already discussed is to focus on serving all the kids in South Carolina, making this thing truly universal. Let's expand this program out eligibility-wise to a universal, available to all South Carolina kids, even if it takes a couple of years. There's also enrollment caps that the previous program had and that this program, based on how it's amended now, will have. Getting rid of those restraints, those enrollment caps, and basically urging the legislature to fund it. Adding in some type of escalator or trigger effect that continues to fund this program so that every South Carolina family doesn't have to worry about each legislative year capping the program. So I think there's a few steps that the South Carolina legislature can do in order to ensure that this program is truly universal and that families can sleep at night knowing that they have this program available to them.
Thank you, Nathan. That is a great update.
Yeah, to a similar vein in Missouri, I think especially if the legislature can give that program at least $50 million or more, they can truly see how many kids this program can serve. I think geographically, there's chances to expand it out in the future to where no matter where anyone lives, no matter how much money that family makes, it's available to them. And so hopefully, fingers crossed, the Missouri legislature sort of tastes a little bit of that this session with funding the program right, and then says, oh wow, let's do more, and let's fund this program fully, and let's make sure it's available to every kid. So there's lots of hope in Missouri as well.
And I have to ask, I've seen a lot of buzz about this. Mississippi is now surrounded by states with choice programs, universal eligibility after Tennessee's success. What do you have to say about that? Do you think Mississippi is going to do it soon?
I hope. Fingers crossed. I think there is a ton of excitement and urgency that parents and advocates in Mississippi are now able to convey to the legislature and legislative leadership, to be exact, and saying, look, this is obviously a popular thing. This is obviously something that parents want, that parents need. Every single state surrounding us and more have universal school choice, not just school choice, universal school choice. And so I think using that as leverage and urging the legislature to do something sooner rather than later is huge for Mississippi. And another thing in Mississippi, the South loves to be competitive. I know a lot of regions in the country love to be competitive. And the South is just, like you just said, Ed, is full of universal school choice, and using that competitive edge as well for legislators saying, hey, look, if you were to rank us right now on where we're at with universal school choice, we would be, in the Southeast region, we would be dead last. So do we want to continue being dead last in that aspect? Probably not. Let's use some of that competitive pressure to push it forward. So I'm very hopeful. I'm cautiously optimistic. I think that there is still a lot of work to be done in terms of legislative leadership pushing this, but I think we're closer than ever. So I'm super excited.
Thank you for that, Nathan. Lots of exciting stuff happening in the Southeast and across the country. And to wrap up the episode, I'll give an update on New Hampshire. And to give some background on New Hampshire's Education Freedom Account program, which was enacted in 2021, the program already meets our thresholds for universal funding and universal usage, meaning that the EFA program gives parents a wide use of allowable educational expenses. They can customize their education. They can use it on things like tuition, tutoring, curriculum, lots of different things. And also universal funding, because the program is tied to the state education funding formula, meaning that no matter how many students apply who are eligible, the funding is guaranteed. So in short, all New Hampshire has to do to become a true universal state is lift the income cap, which is currently limited to students from families making 350% of the federal poverty level or less. So all New Hampshire has to do is lift that income cap and then become the fifth state to achieve true universal choice, joining Arizona, Arkansas, Florida, and West Virginia. Now there is a bill moving to the legislature to do that. There are sponsors in the House and the Senate. In the House, we have HB 115 moving, and then there's also a Senate bill, SB 295, which will have a public hearing coming up on Wednesday. We're also awaiting Governor Kelly Ayotte's budget. We're not sure if education freedom accounts will have an expansion in the budget or not, but we're waiting to hear if they'll be included and what will become the main driver to push for universal in New Hampshire. On the campaign trail, the governor did endorse universal choice, so proponents are watching very closely. And that will wrap us up for today. Thank you for listening. For more information on EdChoice and our research, visit edchoice.org. And feel free to follow me on Twitter at Ed Tarnowski. I'm your host, Ed Tarnowski, also known as Ed with EdChoice. I hope you'll tune in next time.